I'm Fiona. I run Electus People, which is a Brisbane-based recruitment agency that focuses on essentially creating opportunities for work for professionals, but also, and perhaps more importantly, really tapping into the core skills and the potential of individuals and giving those individuals the tools they need to grab those opportunities out there in the market. So this session today is really focused on giving you guys some inspiration and motivation to re-enter the workforce if that is what your plans are. It is certainly an unusual job market, to say the least. And I think that's really based heavily on what is now this post-pandemic environment, or somewhat of a post-pandemic environment. That's made a lot of changes. Certainly the job market that we knew prior to all this is different to what it is now. And I dare say it's probably not going to go back to what it was before. Things have certainly changed, but with change comes exciting new opportunity for people like yourself. So what I want to do is I want to give you some ideas on, well, how to identify what those changes are and what you can do to really maximise your skills and create those opportunities that you're after. So the topic of today is really re-entering the workforce. The first thing that people tend to always worry about is that big old gap in their resume. How are they going to justify it? Will you be of any value to employer, given that you've been away for so long? And really, that comes down to confidence. People, when they have a big old gap in their resume, they lack confidence. They start to doubt themselves and think, oh, no one's going to really want to hire me. Well, to be honest, that couldn't be further from the truth. And in fact, you should now see that. Perhaps more than ever before, employers are looking differently at resumes, perhaps because they're looking for multidisciplinary skilled people. That time away could represent valuable life experience you've had that perhaps some of their current employees may not have. So if you look at things such as time away working on committees, volunteering your time to be part of some kind of fundraising project, you would have gathered some valuable skills. Even as a parent managing a home, you'd be quite surprised at the number of skills you would have gained, unpaid for, of course. From managing finances, to doing some social media for your partner's business or for your kids' businesses, etc. Volunteering, of course, your time at your school, etc. Being on a board. There's a whole raft of things you could have done that collectively can now add value and valuable weight to your CV, so long as you can clearly articulate what they are. Okay. So these are some of the questions that you'd probably ask yourself, and it is important when you are looking to re-enter the workforce. You need to kind of be in the right mindset. Most people fall into the trap of racing into the job market. Okay, I've got to get work, I've got to get a job. They look immediately at the work they've done in the past and they just spring to action, get on a job board, apply for a whole raft of jobs, only to be somewhat disappointed because A, you don't get any response. You're kind of scratching your head thinking, but I thought I was right for that role. Well, not necessarily. If you take that scattergun approach, 9 times out of 10, you're really not going to get the call back. So you really have to ask yourself, well, what are your work interests now after all this time? And like the current environment, have your interests changed? Has your career direction changed? I can guarantee you it probably has. You may be fearful to want to really take those changes seriously, but it's really worth looking into rather than taking the safe approach of trying to recapture the career you had previously and trying to apply for jobs that you had, 3, 4 years ago. It's a great time to recalibrate your skill set and look at, well, what do I want to do? Another question you might want to ask is, well, look, what kind of industries are out there that I could possibly explore? Don't just stick with the industries you know. Industries have changed incredibly, and they often value job applicants that may not have come from their industry, and therefore can bring a more creative, fresh perspective on the role and their industry. Again, if you can articulate and justify the reasons for wanting to explore a new industry, it could prove to create some kind of brand new career path for you. The other thing you need to ask yourself before bouncing back is, well, do I want to resume full-time work? Do you want full-time work? Do you want part-time work? These are very important factors to consider, because you may have been available to work full-time, 8 o'clock until 5:30, 6 o'clock previously. That may have changed considerably now. And you may, in fact, not simply want to work full-time anymore. Some of the other questions you ask yourself is, well, do you want to work for yourself? There's quite a lot of interest now in working for yourself. And, technology has enabled so many of us to now work quite effectively as independent contractors, consultants, etc. If you're brave enough and you feel it's something that you've got the confidence to do, and you've got a skill set that can stand up on its own, and you've got the confidence to promote yourself, yeah, great. It's a great way, a great alternative than just simply looking down the barrel of resuming full-time work as an employee. And as I said, one of the biggest questions is, well, have I gained new skills during my time away from the workforce? In fact, you've almost got to really think about that. By coming back after a few years and saying you haven't, it doesn't look that attractive or appealing to a prospective employer. Employers will be really quite open to someone being away from work, but present a cachet of new skills, voluntary skills that you may have done during that time. It looks great and it's impressive to an employer that's looking for innovative people, if I can say that word, innovative people, creative people, and people with strong work ethics. Perhaps one of the other questions you could ask yourself is, consider your time away from work, as I said, as an advantage, not a handicap, and look at your life experience as, well, does it have any kind of monetary value? You really now have to almost put yourself in the hirer's position and, I suppose, ask yourself, well, would you hire you? So if you can think of that question and answer that, you'll probably be in a great position to go for the roles and the opportunities that are going to be best suited to you. Putting yourself in the hirer's position. A lot of people don't do that. They just kind of assume, well, here I am, here's my resume, hire me. You've got to think a little bit strategically now. Okay. Okay, so let's go on to what I would call my 6 steps to get back onto the career ladder or into the workforce, so to speak. These are 6 points that I think are really important to consider as you are embarking on a job search. You really do have to do your homework today.
Employers are quite creative, and hirers, recruiters are quite creative about how they approach a search for the right candidate in the market. So you, in turn, have to be quite creative and strategic, and you have to do your homework. So these are the 6 steps I think can be helpful if you are starting that journey. So the first one would be size up your situation. The second one is seek out information. The third one is settling on your talents. The fourth one is skill up. The fifth one is style your CV. And the final one, the most important one, is schmooze with people in your industry. I do like that word, schmooze. So, all right, well, let's start with step 1, sizing up your situation. As I said before, it's critical that you do not rush. Many people panic, and generally it never works out. Why? Because employers don't hire panic. They like to hire assurance, confidence. So if you are going in there just panicking, I've got to get work, it generally will come across. Be real about what you want to actually do as well. You know, as I said before, if you are coming back and returning to the workforce, really drill down on what you want to do, what type of role you're after. Once you can pinpoint that, often the rest looks after itself because you become a little bit obsessed with that type of position. You know, you've often concluded why, you can back it up with skills, and often that will resonate with a prospective hirer. You know, ask yourself, of course, have your work goals and your interests changed? And has the target industry that you're looking at moved on? So really size up, you know, the work that you've done before, is that job still available? I mean, has it kind of become a bit redundant or a bit old hat? Really think about that. And if it has, well, what's happened to it? And what's it kind of transition into? And then have you got those skills? If you haven't, that's something you've got to really think about. And critical to this is really sizing up the situation also with the employers out there in those target markets that you're looking for. You know, have their needs changed? What's happening in their industry? Are you aware of any changes or trends? That's important because if you give the appearance that you understand their industry and you're following what they're doing, that will resonate very favorably with an employer. So the second one is, it's a no-brainer. Seek out information. So you research the job market. Start looking at a lot of the job ads. I often say to people, you know, if you're finding you're not sure about how to approach the job market, take the time to really just look through on popular job boards. Look at various ads. You know, it doesn't matter where the location is. That doesn't matter at this stage. But do research and start to read through some of the job ads that are posted that are of positions that would, to you, appeal to you and you think you can do and you think you'd be considered for. You'll find there's a common thread amongst all of them. And there's often that critical paragraph in that position to be considered for this role. We're looking for, and there's usually some dot points that list below. And those dot points will be a combination of skills, perhaps qualifications depending on the role, but critical will be traits, demonstrated talents, capabilities, personality traits. Look closely at those and you'll find there's a bit of a common denominator amongst those. Tick them off. You'll start to get an idea of the flavour of the market or in that particular industry. and really, almost get a highlighter, print them out, do what you've got to do. Print them out and kind of highlight those areas that you think, yep, got this, not sure about this one, maybe use a different Nico, and then start to see how you can embed them into that CV. Because if they don't really marry up that well, you can kind of work that out, that you're not going to be placed into the, consideration category. Also look for skills shortages. Just, throw it out there. If you're looking at some different industries and you've been out, worked for quite a while, you've gained some new skills, well, are there some skills shortages out there? What's in demand? You can get a whole raft of information about that, about skills shortages in Australia, what is in demand, what isn't, what is an emerging skill trend, and see if that applies to you as well. Definitely look for the most in-demand jobs in your target area. So perhaps you've worked for a company before and you held a role, but as part of that role, you were also involved in some other projects. Since leaving, you've noticed that there's an increase in particular demand for a certain type of role. Look at your own skill sets and see if that applies to you and whether or not you can drive your career in that direction. Once you've got all that, then it's time to really start to recalibrate, redesign that CV. And of course, the critical part of your CV is page 1, where you really have to nail it in terms of outlining what is your professional objective, what are your key capabilities and competencies, what are your qualifications, what are your personality attributes, and anything else that adds value. That, to me, page 1 is really gold in a CV, because if there is no interest in having read page 1, then a hirer is less likely to read on. So the next one is, okay, settling on your talents. So you've done some research, you've started to look into the market, you've done a bit of a brainstorm about the type of skills that are out there, that are perhaps in demand. You've had a look at the companies that you're interested in. Now it's just getting pure, solid gold clarification on, well, what have I got? What are my skills? If you're not 100% clear on that, well, you're certainly not going to come across as effective as you'd want to be at interview stage. Right at this point, you are still at job hunt, resume, submission stage. So you must get some understanding of what your skills are. And as I've highlighted here, don't rely solely on your big ticket items. When I say big ticket items, I think, well, just that past experience you've had, those key skills you've got, perhaps a particular qualification. Don't just rely on them. Really drill down on, those micro skills that I mentioned before. And that is, skills that you may have gained over time on a voluntary basis, or you may have done some short courses for personal interest's sake. They can certainly be added to your CV and will make your CV far more attractive. From there, once you've got your skills, you can start to almost design the type of career you want to go for, or the position you're actually looking for. Because the skills that you've got, from the strongest to perhaps the most mid-tempo type skills, will really reflect the very position that you're after. So it's almost a bit like a job description in a way. And then you plan your job hunt around that profile. Okay. One thing you might want to add, and you may discover as you're going through that journey, is acknowledging the fact that some further studies may be needed, whether you like it or not. For example, if you wanted to work in the growing health and aged care, community care sector, if you have done none of that type of work before, but you love the idea of caring for the elderly, one of the biggest growth areas, particularly in Australia, is health and aged care and in-home care and support. Now, several years ago, you could move into that field and not necessarily need a qualification. But that particular sector has become, I guess, a bit more professionalised, so to speak. There's a lot more governance and compliance that is in that particular sector, and for very valid reasons and important reasons. So with that now requires you to have, I believe, a minimum certificate 3. So if that's something you wanted to do, well then it would be worth your while exploring study that might take 4 months or so, but it obviously would be worthwhile in the end. There may still be opportunities for you to work in that sector and perhaps studying part-time, certainly, but recognising that some further study is needed is important as well. And also, further study boosts your knowledge and gets you up to date with what's happening in that industry, naturally gives you industry recognition, and just boosts your job prospects in a particular target market. So styling your CV now. So you've identified what your skills are, etc. You've looked at the market. You've acknowledged whether or not you need to add any qualifications. Here's now the time to start to style your CV. Now, over the years as a recruiter, I've seen many CVs, many. Where people fall down is assuming that the CV they had a few years ago is perfectly fine. But you really do have to look at a CV as a business document. It is the very first document that a prospective employer or hirer is going to see, and their first impression of you. So it's a first impression on paper. So if you do not take the time to look at that business document and ask yourself whether or not it's as professional looking and reflective of you as it possibly can, then you're really minimising your chances. And I guess the only person you can blame is yourself there. I've seen many with spelling mistakes, poor formatting. One section's highlighted, one section isn't. There's got to be consistency across that document, and it's got to be well written. If you've done your research, you've read professional job ads, well, if your CV isn't as equally professionally written, well, why would they hire you? I know that's the first thing I look at, and it really reflects the person's genuine interest and their seriousness about job hunting. If they've taken the time to refresh that document with a new, fresher professional statement, they've really given clear consideration to what their key capabilities and competencies are. They've really taken the time to list what their personality attributes are. That ticks a lot of boxes as well. I can't tell you how many times I've received a CV with an accompanying cover note for a job that's completely different to the one that a person's applied for. Out. Like, there's just no first chance, that's it. First impression is absolutely paramount. And people question why then they don't get considered. If you're the hirer and you're receiving a well-written CV, you're obviously going to appreciate and respect that person a little bit more than the person that's sent through a cover note that's the wrong cover note. So ask yourself, does the content flow? Does it paint the right picture of you? Is the content updated? Does the actual design reflect you? And does it present an impression that you want others to receive about you? So, get down to the nitty gritty. Decide on the right font size. Makes a huge difference, the right font. Nothing flowery. It's a business document. Leave those lovely photo snaps at home. It's very debatable, the whole photo on the CV thing, but I can tell you now after, 15 years in recruitment, for me, it's categorically a no. Unless you are going for a modelling assignment, there is no photograph on a CV. There are many other alternative platforms where you can post that pic, i.e. LinkedIn, Facebook if they wanted to look you up, anything like that. But your CV really is a business document, and you want the hire or the reader to focus all their attention on the content and not in any way be distracted by a photograph, which by human nature, people always will. Really important in a CV too is using what I call action-oriented language. If you think about the current job market, so much change, so much flux in this market. There's so much disruption that's occurred. So it's almost getting into the headspace of the employer now. Who are they looking for that can help them navigate what is quite a disruptive, chaotic type of environment? They're looking for agility. They're looking for strong work ethic. They're looking for, doers. People then just get stuck into it and go with the flow. So it's more important than ever to use powerful, positive, action-oriented language. Pepper it throughout your CV. And that can be words such as, enthusiastic, motivated, outcomes-focused. Don't be afraid to put that in. It is appealing to an employer who really is looking for solutions and great people that are going to stick around and get in there and help them out. Drive and enthusiasm, as I said, is critical right now. And then finally, I get back to my favourite word, schmoozing. A lot of people at interview will say to me, oh, I'm not a networker. Oh, I'm not very good at networking. Well, we all have to network. You can't think of schmoozing or networking as the domain of the business developer. It doesn't matter if you are the accounts payable person or the general manager or the up-and-coming accountant. What you do relies heavily on your engagement skills. Communication in any type of role today is paramount, largely because so much work that we do is produced and generated online. So being able to convey excellent communication skills, both written and verbal, is important. But when it comes to schmoozing, it is important while you're on a job hunt journey. Employers, as I said, are adopting more strategic ways to identify and attract new staff. So no longer does the employer or the in-house recruiter rely solely on that traditional path to looking for people. They are employed to proactively job hunt for people in the event that they need people. So they're regularly staking out the market, actively promoting themselves or the company online on platforms such as LinkedIn, reaching out, connecting with people who are perhaps like-minded or appear to be like-minded, and they will then use those strategies to fill positions. So simply posting an ad and hoping for the ideal pool of candidates is not necessarily fait accompli when it comes to filling roles anymore, and the same with people like myself being recruiters. So as the job seeker, you need to tap into that reality and make sure that you yourself are at the very least, profiling yourself somewhere online in a way you want, because at the point of submitting or applying for a position, often they will www and look you up. So if there's something online that suggests that you are proactively or making an effort to network, staying current will certainly earn ticks for you. So definitely do that. So that pretty much brings us to the end of today's session. I hope some of these points and my 6 points in getting into your job hunt mindset helps you, has given you something to think about. I do this regularly. Of course, if you're interested and you think some further coaching or getting some further job hunting skills from me would be helpful, you can go to my website, which is electuspeople.com.au, or you can certainly email me anytime at fiona@electuspeople.com.au. But no matter where you are, it may appear to be that there are no opportunities, but I can certainly reaffirm that there is always an opportunity for someone. What it really comes down to is you yourself as the job seeker being strategic enough to identify where those options are and where those opportunities are, and crafting your own brand and professional position so that you can grab those opportunities. Thank you for your time, and have a great journey to new employment. Bye for now.